That's still too hot. So it turns out The Edge of Tomorrow is actually pretty good. I hadn't watched it yet because, I don't know, I saw it and I was like, yeah, okay, more Tom Cruise action schlock. And then it turns out, damn, this is actually like a pretty damn good sci-fi action flick. I think it is, over the past decade, up there is like one of the most well thought out sci-fi movies that I've watched. So, and I mostly watch sci-fi, so I feel like that's pretty high praise. But I have my notes with me. Also, yeah, if you're new here and you didn't come from the main channel video, you might want to watch that, where that's more specifically about the design of the mimics in The Edge of Tomorrow and how A, it's really unique, and B, I think that no other sci-fi movie could really copy it. So if you want to hear more detail about like character design and stuff, that's the video for you. Otherwise, this is going to be a general rambling about my thoughts about the movie, because I've got like 3 pages. You know, not everything can make it into the main channel video. Because if I just did a rambling about a movie every time I spoke about whatever I wanted to speak about, they would just all be uncoordinated messes and it would just be me rambling for 40 minutes. And I feel like people don't want to watch that and I don't want to edit that. So I got around to watching it just because I saw some other video mention it in terms of just like really good sci-fi. I can't remember what the context was or what the video was, but it was like, hey, you should like really watch this. And I was like, yeah, okay. Top Gun Maverick was really good. The last few Tom Cruise movies I've watched have all been actually really good. So it's probably pretty good. Yeah, it turns out it is. Quick recap, Tom Cruise is a military public affairs guy that gets ordered to go to the front to document the alien invasion from the battleground. He tries to blackmail his way out of it, doesn't succeed, gets arrested, gets demoted, and then sent off to the war front anyway. And that's probably my first note about the movie. I like that our lead starts off as a coward. He's a chicken shit. Like, he's very openly like, hey, look, I can't do war. There's a reason I'm in media. Like, this is kind of, this is my safety net of, you know, being involved in the war, doing my part, but not putting my life on the line. Not, I think he said something along the lines of like, I can't stand the sight of blood. Like, I'll pass out if I see blood or something like that. And I really like that we have a coward. Like, I feel like a lot of Tom Cruise movies, he's a hero from the get-go. And I mean, even outside of Tom Cruise movies, that happens a lot, right? And I think that's just really tired. It's boring. It makes it so like, it doesn't feel like there's a great sense of progression through the movie. Like, a lot of the time, I'll even criticize the Spider-Man movies for this, where Peter Parker tends to be heroic, hits a big roadblock, gets demotivated, and then comes back. Even more heroic than before. And I feel like that's a pretty common story structure that we see a lot, and I think it's really fucking boring because we've seen it so much. And I really like that we start off with a coward who mostly by circumstance is forced into growing a pair of balls, and I really like it. Tom Cruise also sells it really well. That's one thing I was actually quite surprised by, is like, I can't, like, he's a very confident coward, but he is a coward. And the way that he puts like the PR spin on trying to get out of being drafted onto the battlefield is really interesting. It's so well done. And the fact that it comes around to bite him in the ass despite his confidence is even better. So I really like that. Honestly, that's my kettle going off. I don't know if anyone else's kettle has that thing where like after it boils, mine has like a little heat button. So it's got like the boil button and then a heat button, and after it's boiled, it automatically turns on the heat one, and it'll just keep it at whatever temperature you set it for. I don't know how long. It does it for like, I think like 5 cycles or something. It's kind of annoying. Anyway, but yeah, so then once he gets basically arrested and sent off to the deserter group, which I think was J Squad. I like that it's very clear that like everyone's like, you're a piece of shit. Like, if you ended up here, you're an awful human being. I love that he's treated like that. Like, he's just another another dude. He's not some prodigy. In fact, he's quite the opposite. Like, he has no military training. No one offers to really train him. And so he goes into the battlefield not knowing, he hasn't like set up the language on the on the exosuit, and doesn't know how to turn off the safety, even though multiple people would joke about, hey, don't forget to turn off your safety before he gets dropped. And I think it's one of those things that makes it a really fun movie, that it takes the piss a little bit, without it being unserious. So yeah, for non-Australians and I guess non-Brits, because I hear Brits say it a lot as well, but taking the piss is like making fun of usually yourself, or something that you're involved in, but without necessarily demeaning it. Just, yeah, being a bit lighthearted about it, being a bit nonsensical, being whimsical. Well, that's a fun way to put it. Not accurate, but it's fun. But yeah, so then when they're on the dropship and the dropship gets hit by one of the aliens and everything's spiraling out of control, I think it's so well done how they encapsulate the disorientation that Cage is feeling. Because, like we said, he's not military trained. He doesn't know shit about shit, really. He's a media guy. And the chaos of the war. I also love that, like, yeah, in this first couple of minutes, as soon as they hit the beach, there's a decapitation. It's not the most obvious decapitation. I'll put a clip playing now of the decapitation because I just thought it was really funny. But aside from that funny little note, like, yeah, all the debris everywhere, a lot of really disorienting camera movements, there's a lot of motion blur. It's also like not super clear what's going on. We don't see the enemy. We don't know why soldier after soldier, dropship after dropship are getting shot down, either way. And then even when we do have stable shots, usually they're like close-ups, medium close-ups with a really shallow depth of field. So everything that's behind your subject is just a blur of fire and sand and smoke. And I think it's a really good way to what's the term? To show shell shock. And it really gets the viewer into the right mindset, which contrasts really well with like the first bit of the movie, like the introductory sequence where it's like a bunch of news segments talking about the war and the UDF and these new exosuits and the Steel Angel of Verdun, I think it was. Also very underrated part of the movie. I think Emily Blunt is great in it, but we'll get to that. That's later in the movie. Yeah, so it starts off like very serious, kind of like, I can't remember if it's 28 days or 28 weeks later, but one of those two movies open with like a montage of news segments that give the viewer the sense of what's been going on, or even the awful RoboCop reboot. But I think generally it is a good technique to very quickly get across a bunch of information to establish context. And then the movie gets a bit lighter, mostly because of Tom Cruise's personality as the military media PR guy is quite jovial, quite confident, a little bit dismissive. And then when he gets thrown into J Squad, you know, everyone's making fun of him and not taking him seriously and laughing at his cowardice because he's very openly cowardly and he's still trying to get out of it until he hits the ground, basically. And then, yeah, that moment where he hits the ground and we have gone from lighthearted, taking the piss out of Tom Cruise to now that shell shock, that like really, really intense battlefield feeling. And it's such a great contrast. It makes it 10 times more impactful. If it was just, you know, like serious, and then we've gone into the battlefield, I don't think it would have had the same impact. I think having that lightheartedness has then that really serious shock of hitting the ground and hitting the battlefield hit the viewer a lot harder, which works really well. And that whole first loop before he dies, honestly, one of the best, I don't know if I would say best sci-fi scenes, because I feel like the reasons that I love it are not the sci-fi elements. I don't super care for the exosuits, that they're used well throughout the movie, but I don't think they're anything that crazy. But I would say it's one of the best war scenes that I've ever seen. Up there with a lot of the stuff in Dunkirk. God, Dunkirk's good. It's boring, but it's good. That's another video. But I have like a massive hard-on for particularly the sound design in Dunkirk. Is genuinely I'm so glad I got to watch it in the cinemas, because genuinely some of the best sound design I've ever experienced. Anyway, so once he has that first kill, he does manage, I think he like sets his language on the exosuit to Chinese, but manages to figure out how to turn off the safety, kills one mimic, and then kills an alpha mimic with a claymore, but then the mimic blowing up in his face kills him, but he's covered in the blue alien hive mind goo, and that sets us into the first loop. And the first two loops, so I guess, would the first one be a loop? No, because that's like before the looping starts. So yeah, the first loop after his first death plays out pretty similarly to the first pre-loop event. And then the third one plays out slightly differently, where he's like now got a grasp on what's going on. And then I'm really glad that time loops, or any movie where there's something very repetitive, is A, thematically can be very interesting, but B, I think is also very, very easy to go from thematically interesting to practically boring. And they did a really good job with the time loops here, not making them boring. The second one is, I would say, probably about the same amount of runtime as the first time that he lands on the beach. And the third one is a bit shorter. And then from that third one, it goes into a montage sequence, which is great because you can still show that trial and error of hitting the ground and then dying again, or like his different ways to try and escape the military. And like in one of the training montages where the whole squad is forced to do 50 push-ups or something, and as a military vehicle comes by, one of the trucks, Tom Cruise tries to like roll to then get under the truck and get away on that, but the first time he tries it, he dies. And I thought it was really funny. And yeah, the montage sequences really make this movie really engaging without it getting too repetitive, because it's one of those things that it could have easily gotten very, very repetitive. Like, I know a lot of people love Groundhog Day. I don't love it because I feel like about halfway through it gets a bit too repetitive. Even though it is still very fun, it gets a little bit samey, and it's very good that Edge of Tomorrow manages to dodge that, because it's very easy to fall into that trap. So then, yeah, about 40 minutes into the movie, things start to change. What is he now? He was Major William Cage at the start of the movie. I think he gets demoted to private. I don't know shit about military ranks. I only know about fucking Valorant. I don't even know about Valorant ranks. That's a lie. Few loops in, after this montage sequence, he gets to sort of save. He tries to save the Angel of Vadun. Rita something. Vernaski? Is it in my notes? No, it's not. That's all right. Yeah, we get to break out of that montage sequence when she says something along the lines of, next time you die, find me, or something like that. And then we get the whole time loop thing explained. He goes to like whatever training facility that she's in, different part of the military base, and she's like, oh, okay, you know what's going on. Okay, let's take you down to like little secret lab area. Where you got, your stereotypical crazy quantum physicist and all that. And they run him through what they know. And I think that was like, it was timed perfectly to break up where it could have gotten repetitive and adds a new spin to the mix. And I think I also liked that they didn't have all the answers straight away. That's something that I feel like a lot of movies don't. Like Valerian. I remember watching that because I really like Dane DeHaan. God, it's a fucking awful movie. And just like so many moments where it's just like, here's the solution, without really that much conflict. And I'm really glad Edge of Tomorrow avoids doing that, because it's something I see in sci-fi a lot, where just very, very simple progression without much conflict. But yeah, I like that they only explain a bit, both in like we don't get explained all the information because some of that's in like another like training sequence, training montage sequence between Cage and Rita. And also they admit like we don't know everything, but here's what we do know. And it was good to be like, okay, cool. Here's like a little bit more information. You've got the viewers a little bit more engaged because they have a better idea of what's going on, but you also haven't given them the solution. And that works. That works well. Now, okay, as much as I did just praise this training montage sequence where Cage gets trained up to super soldier-ish level, I don't love parts of it. To me, it felt like it just skipped bit a bit of the movie. Keep in mind that the pace of the movie up until this part, which is about an hour in, has been pretty fast the entire time. There's not been a lot of like really slow scenes, and there's definitely not been anything that's like felt like it's gone on for too long. And at this point, we go from like a very like rapid montage sequence to it slows down a ton, which I don't strictly think is a bad thing. I think it is important to have that contrast of really exciting rapid scenes and then also go and slow down and have scenes like in the car where they're just chatting for a bit, driving. And I think that is something that is necessary to balance out the pace of a film. But it did feel a little bit jarring going from like basically an hour of quite fast the entire time to then, I would say, how long's the whole movie? An hour 45-ish. To then, yeah, like another 30 minutes of quite slow. And then it kind of picks up a little bit at the end, but overall, I think it's a very good watching experience. I highly recommend it. And there's a lot of lines in here that I really like. That there's just lots of nice little character moments. As much as I don't super care for what I would say are like fillery scenes where it's just kind of padding the runtime. I don't mind those when you give characters actual depth through filler. Like, I know a lot of people complain about filler as a whole, like across TV and cinema and like everywhere, but filler is important. You just need to use it right. It's like one of the things that I don't care for a lot of anime that have filler, but one of the reasons that like so many anime have like a beach episode or, you know, like a party episode or something, right, is so that you have at least one moment to just sit with the characters for a little bit and get to know them, get to know how they operate in their day-to-day life and how they just talk to people when there aren't things at stake, how they, you know, what their philosophies on life are. You get those like little moments, even if it's like just one or two lines that really build out a character. And I'm glad that all the bits that felt fillerish in this, on a second watch, I was like, yeah, okay, these are actually good character moments. Particularly like a lot of the little dialogue that I think, depending on how you feel about the way that Joss Whedon writes, you know, the bantery MCU sort of writing, which I fucking hate personally. There's a couple moments like where they're in this barn house and it's like a little, not quite that level of bantery that feels fake, but getting towards it, it was like writing that line. But in other parts of that same scene, there's a great sense of intimacy and connection and little bits of character that show the personality of both William, who, you know, we've kind of already gotten to know pretty well, and Rita, who's been pretty silent and stoic for most of the movie, which William does make fun of and kind of, you know, tries to crack that shell. And I like that a lot. I like those little bits, and that moment where he's like, yeah, look, we've got this far, like to this farmhouse about 50 times now. When he's like trying to stall to heal her up and, you know, make her a coffee. And yeah, the moment where she realizes, I actually really like this. The moment where Rita realizes that something's up, that they've been here. Well, really, that William has been here before, is the point where he just knows how to make her coffee. And I love that. It's like, it's such a little detail of intimacy that I feel like you don't really see in cinema that much, or that it's not really pointed out. There are definitely plenty of times where, there's a couple and one of them is making coffee for the both of them. And it's not really noted that, yeah, this person knows how I like my coffee, and they don't have to ask me how I want my coffee. They'll just make it the way that I like it. And that's such like a wonderful sense of intimacy. And yeah, so the moment that Rita's like, you just made my coffee the way that I like my coffee and I didn't tell you. And she snaps out of that like slight comfort of like, cool, he's like taking care of me. I can just like breathe for a little bit. Like we can still finish the mission, and snaps back into soldier mode. Is like, how fucking long have we been here? How many times have we done this? I really like that moment because it shows that like, yeah, she does have that side of like every human wants intimacy and connection. But on the flip side, she is also very, very dedicated to the mission and puts that above everything else. As well as, she mentions, I can't remember if it's before or after this, that she had another partner when she was going through the time loop stuff, and she wishes that she didn't know, can't remember if it was him or her, but whoever her partner in crime was during her time loops, she wishes that she didn't know him that well after all they went through, and then she had to watch him die a gajillion times. And I thought that was a really good moment. I really, really like that. And I feel like a lot of action movies don't take time to give you those little moments that connects to your characters on a more personal level, a little more intimate level, rather than a fight over values. I think that's like a big thing that people relate to in action movies that just makes it's shorthand, right? Is this person is good. They're fighting corruption in the city or whatever the fuck. And you're kind of just meant to jump straight on their side because that's a value that most people can relate to. And that's easy. Like I said, that's shorthand. We have shorthand for a reason. It kind of skips over the stepping stones that you could be doing, but you can also just do it the fast way. And for some movies that works fine. Like Renfield. Renfield's a great example of that, where I can't remember the character's name, but the cop that's played by Aquafina, yeah, like your shorthand is that her dad was a cop and he instilled like a great sense of honesty and pride in her, and she's very anti-corruption. And that's just like something that most people can just jump on. Like, I think that's like a really great example of how shorthand kind of skips the basic character development stuff, gets you on that character's side, and then you can jump to the good bits, the bits that make that character unique. So I'm not saying shorthand is a bad thing, but I like that Edge of Tomorrow doesn't rely on too much of that shorthand. I like that most of the characters get those little moments of development. Hello. You gonna chill with me? Okay. I like that most of the characters, even if it's just one or two lines, get those little moments that they're like, yeah, okay, this is a person. It's not just a character. And I feel like a lot of action movies gloss over that. There were a couple of scenes, particularly towards the back end of the movie. I've got a note here at 1 hour and 14 minutes. So editor Josh, you know what's put in here. The note is just, I'll hold this up. I can't see shit. There were a couple of scenes where even with, like I had this door, so my living room's through there, right? So I had my blinds down, and then this door closed as well, and all the lights off, and I still couldn't see shit. So I don't love that. I don't know. I also went into my TV settings and turned up the backlight as high as I could. Still couldn't see shit. So I don't think that one is on my viewing environment. I think that's how it was graded, and I hate that. Especially when later in the movie, when they're doing the final mission where they're going to the Louvre in Paris, because that's where the hive mind has been hiding. That entire scene is at night, and it is lit so well. Like it does that really great like rim lighting on all of your leads that make it very clear that it's still very dark, but you can still clearly see everything that's in the scene. Even if you can't make out all the details, you have all the information to understand what's going on. Versus there were a couple of scenes in the, I would say like start of the third act, where I was like, this is just it's straight up just too dark to see anything. I'm not getting any points of contrast so I can really follow along. That's something I've seen in a lot of movies, both in theaters and at home. So I'm not gonna, no, I am gonna criticize it because I'm fucking sick of it. Stop doing that. I'm gonna cry because the camera stopped recording while I was talking for like 20 minutes because I didn't hear the timer go off. So I'm actually gonna set a timer on my watch now so I don't do that again. So I cut off when I was talking about the dark scenes. I'm gonna skip past that because I kind of just rambled on it. But yeah, then towards the end of the movie, in the final act, they made the relationship between William and Rita explicitly romantic versus before, I wouldn't even say it was implicitly romantic. Like there's definitely that developed intimacy, like I said, but I think that intimacy could have been perfectly platonic. Do you want to get on my lap? Oh, without knocking my tea over. Yeah? No? Yeah. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, so like in that way that they've developed intimacy, because you know, basically Tom Cruise has gone through 50, 100, 500 lifetimes with her. Like I get that naturally when you spend that sort of time with someone, you end up falling in love with them. That doesn't have to be romantic love. That can be platonic love. And I don't feel like the movie had really implied much romantic subtexts before the point where they make it explicitly romantic. And I don't love it. I don't hate it. Like, I get it. Hollywood loves having their romance subplot because even if you don't super care for the action part, you'll have other parts of the audience that care for the romance part, even though in this case, I feel like it was really forced. It didn't feel natural. Like I could see their relationship, say, after the movie, moving into a romantic direction, but based on what happens in the movie, it didn't really make sense to have what felt like a bit of a forced romantic moment. So don't love it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a studio mandated thing. So it is what it is. And then last note I have, at an hour and 43 minutes, is it's not Jover, which I don't like the actual final ending of the movie. Aside from the fact that it feels like it just kind of like drags on. I know it's only like 5 to 10 minutes, but it feels really slow. And basically, when Cage kills the big hive mind thing and he dies, he gets sent back to the day that he lands in London. And that initial moment of him waking up in the helicopter and being like, oh my God, I'm back here? Was really good. I really liked that. I was like, oh fuck, did the hive mind send him back even further than we thought it could? And it's actually just like an eternal endless war that they're never going to be able to escape from? Or is it a case of he's been sent back to like the start of the time loop, but the war's over, but then why did it send him back that far? I don't know. I think that particular choice, a bit weird. And personally, if I was writing or editing it, I would make the argument that the movie should have ended at that moment where he's in the helicopter and he looks out and he's over London and you have that look on his face where he's like, is it over? Or am I just back at the start? And I would make that argument because I think it's a more controversial ending. I think it would be much more divisive. There'll be a lot of people that love the ambiguity of it and a lot of people that hate it. And based on how people interpret it, there'll be a lot of discussion around it. And to me, I like more ambiguous endings. I like movies that, or not just movies, but in this case, movies that leave a lot of the information up to interpretation. And that would be a good way to do this in this case. But I understand Hollywood likes their more conclusive, happy endings. I just don't love it in this case. Particularly the shot that it ends on is Cage is gone to where Rita's been training, where he did all his training stuff, but like they're back at the start of the time loop. And so she doesn't know him. And he goes up to her, presumably to be like, hey, the war's over, come do some PR stuff. And greets her with this like really warm, excited, friendly smile. That's not, your PR friendly smile. It's like a friendly, intimate smile. And I have mixed feelings on it. I think I wouldn't hate that ending as much if there wasn't the forced romantic subplot beforehand. Especially because like the romantic subplot is also one-sided. He's the only one experiencing this time loop over and over in the time loop that we see. And so it feels like a little 51st Dates. Just, yeah, a little bit, I don't want to say non-consensual, and parasocial isn't quite the right word. But yeah, parasocial is what I'm going to go with because it encapsulates the same feeling of parasocial relationships, of this one-sidedness of, me talking to camera and, people watching hundreds, thousands of hours of me, in videos and streaming and feeling like they developed a bit of a relationship with me because they have spent a lot of time with me, but I haven't spent a lot of time with them. That one-sided dynamic feels a little bit icky to end the movie on with like a positive spin. But anyway, overall, I really like the movie. I highly recommend watching it. If you haven't watched main channel video, also go watch that. That one has more work put into it. Please go watch it. And thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this ramble. It's been a long one. I'm still annoyed that I got time. But fucking recording limits.